Hello and most welcome to 1798. This will be a direct continuation of 1797. And we will continue with aspect perception and understanding the meaning of words in Wittgenstein's philosophical investigations. And we continue where we left off at page 11. I think that would be 12 for color. Last time we mentioned that the aspect perception has strong familiarity or family resemblance to the quantum mechanical wave and particle. And I would say this is especially important to find a close connection to quantum mechanics and pure language or easy language of Wittgenstein. One can understand how important a pedagogical tool this would be. Imagine being able to go directly without having to refer to mathematics, diagrams, complex technical jargon, and so forth. And instead being able to reach directly and to show, this is quantum mechanics. We also mentioned there was an interesting parallelism between the use of triangles in the article by Luke Davies, also coming from Wittgenstein, a Tholen triangle. The triangle is also used in the quantum mechanics of Julian Barber to show that time and space are secondary features, as he often calls it, not coming first. First is the event, something I see a close resemblance to in Wittgenstein's Witz or point. You could say what it is about. The point is the triangle. So let's continue the read. page 11 or 12, depending on what way you printed or read it. If we admit that we can, though perhaps only with difficulty, view the triangle as something that has fallen over, then we are seeing an aspect of the image that we have potentially never seen before. Do we want to say in this case that we cannot possibly see the image in the way we are now describing? That is, do we need to be able to consistently see the image as something that has fallen down to be able to say that now we see it in that way? I think the answer to this question is univocally no. We need to go, yes. No. If we have a strong enough familiarity with the primary aspect of the image and enough experience with interpretation in general, then we need not have ever interpreted the image as an object that has fallen down before. The same is the case with metaphor. We're able to understand completely new metaphors only if we have a strong grasp of the primary senses of the words employed and experience interpreting the text. Recall that we need not always understand metaphor, and that we will not always understand the meaning immediately. The dawning, yes. The dawning of the meaning aspect of the first type of metaphor does not happen without the use of imagination of some kind. So we can see that understanding aspect perception is necessary to our understanding of metaphor. Conclusion. I have now demonstrated the importance of aspect perception to understanding the meaning of words in certain cases. This is due to the fact that in cases of idiosyncratic uses of language and metaphor, we interpret an image with multiple aspects. Important to this understanding is the knowledge that there are both primary and secondary uses of the word, of words. That the secondary uses are parasitic on the primary uses, and that we interpret meaning in some cases in addressing two objections to Wittgenstein. It is my hope that I have not only given a clear exposition of his view, but also strengthened it. And that ends the article by Luke Davies. And we have the fallen triangle here. I imagine that you have all looked at it already. A scalene triangle. So to further develop the idea put forward by Luke Davies with a primary and secondary uses as an explanatory device to understand aspect seeing. I will add from the Nestor himself, Paul Johnston, from page 133 in his Wittgenstein Rethinking the Inner, chapter 5. Yes, that's the chapter. You could go up. The complexity of the inner. There we have it. Fantastic. To the left. I will read two quotes and some of the comments of Johnston here. You would see that in a more complex way, this is also what Johnston Wittgenstein is pointing to. And although it might seem in the beginning that the inner disappears, it comes back with a, I wouldn't like to say vengeance, but it clearly comes back much strengthened. Actually, the inner becomes global. But let's start with this quote from Philosophical Investigations, page 179. Yeah, we can go up a bit. That would be great. Now we're going in the wrong direction. We need to go down to page 133, please. There you go. Suppose we were observing the movement of a point. For example, a point of light on a screen. It might be possible to draw important consequences of the most various kinds from the behavior of this point. And what a variety of observations that can be made here. The path of the point and certain of its characteristic measures, amplitude and wavelength, for instance, or the velocity and the law according to which it varies, or the number or position of the places at which it changes discontinuously, or the curvature of the path at these places, and innumerable other things. Any of these features of its behavior might be the only one to interest us. We might, for example, be indifferent to everything about its movement, except for the number of loops it makes in a certain time. And if we were interested not just in one such feature, but in several, each might yield us special information different in kind from all the rest. This is how it is with the behavior of man, with different characteristic features which we observe in his behavior. Alan, if you please could go up a bit. In the previous chapters, we have often used the term the inner as a convenient way of referring to our psychological concepts in general. However, the term contains a danger. And listen. The term contains a danger, for it fosters the temptation to see the various elements of the inner as essentially alike. Different components of a homogeneous whole. In fact, our psychological concepts fall into various categories, and within these groups there are differences as well as similarities. To understand these differences, we must explore the grammar of the concepts. For it is not enough simply to note that our experiences take a variety of forms. The complexity of the inner reflects not differences of degree, but differences of concept. If I now say a quote from Remarks on the Philosophy of Psychology, if I now say that the experience of remembering and the experience of pain are different in kind, that is misleading. For experiences of different kinds makes one think perhaps of a difference like that between a pain, a tickle, and a feeling of familiarity. Whereas the difference of which we are speaking is comparable rather to that between the numbers 1 and the square root of -1. As this question suggests, there's a strong temptation to underestimate the complexity of the inner. And this is reinforced by the inclination to treat all differences as simply experiential. In most cases, however, intrinsic differences are grammatical differences in disguise. The essential difference between pain and intention, for example, is not that they have different contents, but that they are radically different types of concepts. Conversely, if anxiety and sorrow are similar, this is not because they feel the same, but because there are similarities in their grammar. If someone said, her experience of anxiety was similar to joy rather than sorrow, we would not say that she experienced the emotion differently from us. But that she cannot mean by anxiety what we do. And I think we could stop there and go for the quotes. It would be possible if we first go back to the article by Luke Davies. It was possible. Well, fantastic. So I took the liberty today to parallel Luke Davies' pedagogical tool of using metaphor I think metonymy would work as well. Metaphor or metonymy to further explicate and explain aspect seeing. And as you understand, of course, there can be much more than two meanings, but that is only in the example. To be tertiary meaning and quadruple meaning. So the triangle has a primary aspect, oddly working fantastically well in parallel with Julian Barber's scientific theory. Thank you very much, Kalle, for pointing that out yesterday. It has been in my head, but I haven't had enough time to prepare anything in that specific direction. But I think we will have enough today. If we go to page 11. And I think it's about 10 lines down. And it's an answer to the question, do we need to be able to see consistently the image as something that has fallen down? And he answers, no. If we have a strong enough familiarity with the primary aspect of the image and enough experience, and I think that is the pertinent word here, with interpretation in general, then we need not have ever interpreted the image as an object that has fallen down before. So we can go further once we have the primary meaning, as Davies calls it. We can go further and advance thinking. We expand it. As long as the first meaning is firmly established in experience. And when I say experience, you're more than welcome to invite things like use, of course, context. And since we know that reality is global, bring in the whole of the universe. Quantum relativity or quantum relational thinking of Carlo Rovelli. If we have that, we can put up new metaphors or aspects. So we expanded metaphor is a type of aspect that can happen by itself. We can will it, we can mention it, and we can further it ourselves. Almost at the end of this page, It's 4 lines from the bottom. This is due to the fact in cases of idiosyncratic uses of language and metaphor, we interpret the meaning of words in the same way as we, listen now, interpret an image with multiple aspects. So if somebody says something for the first time, that can actually make sense because of the metaphorical aspect seeing. And do you see also, this is in parenthesis, I don't want to confuse you. I don't want you to fall over like the triangle or an acquaintance of us. But there is a problem here. Some people might think that is pointing to private language. No, we need not fall into that trap. Aspect seeing and metaphor liberates us from that erroneous conclusion. So let's go to, if we may, to Paul Johnston. Marvelous, this switch. We should redo this. And in the beginning of the quote from Philosophical Investigations, it is eerie, but he's using an exterior, what we usually perceive to be something of physics, exterior position. And although I mentioned earlier that there could be a close connection here to quantum mechanics, he uses actually amplitude and wavelength. And as you see, a point on a screen can have an enormity of different aspects. An enormity. There's really no end to it. But here is, oddly enough, wavelength mentioned. But it, of course, can be a particle. So you can see the particle as a metaphor of the superposition, metaphorically used. You see how I transfer the understanding that we now got from Luke Davies to Paul Johnston's. And once more, in parenthesis, you see the complexity of the inner that we are getting into now is also the complexity of what we normally call exterior. But they are most definitely intertwined. And as we see underneath the quote from Johnston himself, if we go down a little bit, in the previous chapters, we have often used the term the inner as a convenient way of referring to our psychological concepts in general. But the term contains a danger. Well, the danger is that we say that everything inside is alike, that they have the trait of sameness, and everything then gets reduced to psychology or a psyche, a mental state or consciousness, if you like. That is a grave oversimplification, as we now come to understand, because constantly metaphor or aspect seeing is going on. If we go to the next page, just after the quote, and that could be the best quote from Johnston, which I got now. A reinforced understanding of what we usually do. As this quotation suggests, there's a strong temptation to underestimate the complexity of the inner. And this is reinforced by the inclination to treat all differences as simply experiential. So which simply refer to all these complexities as I had an experience, when they're in fact absolutely different, like wave and particle, having family resemblance, but not sameness. So when we say, I had an experience of anger, rage, is the same to say, it is just a triangle. Or as we say in classical physics, it is just particles. The duck rabbit is forgotten, the aspects are gone, and a lot of this fantastic complexity is gone to our experience. This is retaken by this, and that's the title of the book, Rethinking the Inner. And I, for my sake, was greatly helped by the little article by Luke J. Davies. Dear colleague Kalle, please join us.
Thank you. Let us return to Davies. Primary. So to this quote from Wittgenstein, he says that it is only if the word has a primary sense for you that you use it in the secondary one. So let's say, take the illusion with the rabbit and duck once again. Let's say that you applied this principle to the rabbit duck. It would be easy to follow the trap and say, rabbit is the primary sense and duck is the secondary, or vice versa. So what I would suggest, this is only a humble suggestion, that Wittgenstein is only describing the ordinary way, how you learn language, but it's not the ideal sense. Because in the ideal sense you would catch the possession at the same time. Could be. Let me take an example.
Yes, I see what you mean.
Let's say take a banal example, Platonic example, like table. You see father points out to the child and says, this is a table, but it would be, one child could perhaps understand it's the very object, but another image child thinks, it's all when we are together around the table. This one has is very obsessed with physical objects, the other is more thinks in feeling about being around the table as a family. So what would be the correct one? No, I don't. I think both are correct. And it's important we don't fall into the trap. Primary sense, the original is that Wittgenstein is pointed to that something is more original than the other. So I would take this phrase with caution.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It should be taken with caution, not to think that one is more original than the other. No, exactly, Kalle. Very good.
And the other thing, let me go now to Davies. Excuse me, not to Davies, to put it on Johnston, to this very
Johnston, yes, rethinking the inner.
Page 133. The quotation, I will mention it since paragraph 179, since it might have implications for wave and length duality, as you implied, Hans.
Yes, it's an odd coincidence.
So, and let's try to reason about this passage, which is, so okay, let me take, I take, what do you call it, what do you call it, ficklampa, what do you call it in English? Or you get a light on a screen, on a computer screen. So you have a point on the screen, so to say.
Yes.
But it's also a wave at the same time in one way.
Yeah.
Because your eyes are both focused, very focused. This reminds me of Macklechist. He says that in order to be a great hunter, a bird has to be very focused, extremely narrow focused, but also have the amplitude to see all the surroundings.
Yes.
So you have the point and the wave, so to say, the narrowness and the breadth. I don't know if that's
no, I think it's a very good comparison, because the point that we usually have in classical physics only, where there is no aspect seeing, is very close to the left hemisphere, and the seed for the bird, which it uses the left hemisphere to discover, so to speak. Whereas the whole world is more like the wave.
So what is Wittgenstein's point here? Is he comparing man with light? Or what is the point here?
He starts with an example in the exterior, and you might as well think that it's quantum mechanics, but because it's absolutely close. And he shows that there are so many metaphorical ways of understanding a point of light on a screen. We have all these multitude of aspects. And this is aspect seeing. This is the metaphorical. And even you can have movement, as he mentions further down. Movement is in itself an aspect in quantum mechanics.
I think this phrase here, except for the number of loops it makes in a certain time, I think it's important. He says that it can do many things like light. It's both wave and particle. It can be both. But we can only focus on a certain time on a certain thing. That it can, in our observation, it's only one thing, like say wave.
Yeah, definitely. And you can also see it this way, as we know from quantum mechanics, some people, because of the experimental layup and the intention from the observer, will see a wave. Some will have a particle. They will have a particle and they will have a wave. As exactly as some people will have a duck and some other people will have a rabbit. So depending on you, the observer, and what happens, it will collapse in different directions. The light on the screen can show its amplitude. It can show its wavelength, its velocity. It can also be a point, and so on and so on. No less is the complexity of our inner. And it's a constantly evolving inner, showing up new facets, new shades. And all these are radically different. There is an advancement of differences here. Welcome back, Kalle. Can you hear me? Seems to be having some problems with his connection.
Yes, indeed. Yes.
I don't know, Kalle, did you catch my last comment on your question there?
No, not really.
Well, you can make a comparison between the duck rabbit ambiguity picture and wave and particle.
Okay.
Some people will see the aspect of the duck, some will see the rabbit. depending on your attitude, how you set up the experience, the experiment, you will get either a wave, one aspect, or in another case, you will get a particle. Both are possible from the so-called superposition, which is the ambiguity in the duck rabbit.
Absolutely.
So it's quite an interesting parallel here between quantum mechanics and the furthering of understanding we got from Luke Davies here, and help with the old Nestor, Paul Johnston himself.
And we can also think about your friend in Canada, with whom you had a couple of meetings. What is his name again?
Stephen M. Rosen, yes.
Yes, thank you. So he made very good points about light, and then at certain point he compared with the word I, that is the I with 3 letters, with you see.
Oh yeah, definitely. Very good.
Yeah, in one way you could see it as an empty, like a camera. That is, it only observes things like empty box, an empty, no, like a camera. But you could also see it as a homonym for the pronoun I see. So it's not empty. So here you have superposition. Actually, this is my interpretation.
Yeah, I agree. Very good. And Johnston is also making a point here. He's saving the soul, more or less, from the incredible reduction it will be to say that all these things of the inner is just experiences, and they can all fall under the same roof, the same umbrella of experiences. They're all psychic things. The same, exactly same thing is done in physics, where everything is particle. So we used to believe until 1914, I think it was, that waves were actually a secondary thing of a particle.
And I don't know if I take too much into this phrase. Any of these features of his behavior might be only one to interest us. So this is perhaps indicating the collapse of the superposition, because we can only see one aspect normally.
Yeah. So in that case, it could be, oh, look at this. I am only interested in the wavelength or that aspect. And that will be the one I have. So you see how closely the observer is engaged here. He's not absent.
And to return to the paper by Davies, it's with the quotation of Wittgenstein about the primary and secondary sense of the word. It's primary, we should see it more from the view of the observation that we happen to observe. It's not that a word has per se a primary.
No. Very good, Kalle. Yeah. No, it doesn't have it's not an essentialist take on language. No.
So I would reformulate that. So using this phrase, any of these features of its behavior, this gives, so to say, the primary sense to the word, that primary sense that it happens to interest us, that we happen to see at that very moment. My brother could see on the table is actually a community of people. And I could say, no, it's only a physical object, which is the table, and so forth.
Oh, yeah, indeed. And just as in the example from philosophical investigations, everything is possible, so to speak. Nothing can be said to be more original. And you could possibly say, I don't know if you like that, Kalle, but you could say that the primary has more to do with your personal experience as an observer. What are you accustomed to? If you usually see a duck and never seen a rabbit, that will influence the whole thing.
Yes, and I think we could perhaps also today end this lecture with this image.
Oh yeah,
Shooting
beautiful.
image.
Welche Tiere gleichen ein? Under oder am meisten? Kaninchen und Ente. Very good. Thank you very much, Kalle Lundahl.
Thank you yourself.
Thank you everyone for listening in, and have a very good morning, good day or afternoon, wherever you are. Bye bye for now.
Thank you.